You've been busy all day and built absolutely nothing. Emails answered, meetings attended, messages replied to, and yet by tonight you'll struggle to name one thing you actually created. That's not laziness, that's not a lack of discipline, that's a life that's been engineered to steal your focus, and you didn't even notice it happening. In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you how to take your mind back. This is deep work, and once you learn it, you become dangerous. We're going to build that together over the next 8 chapters. Let's go. Chapter 1. The myth of I work better under pressure. Let's start by dismantling something. A belief so common, so culturally embedded, so casually accepted that most people never stop to question it. I work best under pressure. You've heard people say this. You've probably said it yourself. Maybe you wear it like a badge of honor, like being someone who works best under pressure means you're wired differently, more exciting, more spontaneous, a natural sprinter who thrives in the chaos of last-minute deadlines. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You don't work better under pressure. You work faster under pressure. That's not the same thing, not even close. Speed and quality are not the same variable. Speed is how fast you output. Quality is the depth of thinking, the elegance of the solution, the permanence of the result. Pressure compresses the time available for deep thinking. It doesn't enhance your cognitive capacity, it restricts it. It forces your brain into survival mode, cutting corners, defaulting to familiar patterns, avoiding the kind of slow, exploratory, uncertain thinking that produces breakthrough work. Here's what's actually happening when you work well under pressure. You're experiencing the sudden removal of all the distractions and procrastinations that were blocking you. The panic clears the noise. You stop checking email because there's no time. You stop scrolling because the stakes are too high. You stop second-guessing because you don't have the luxury of time. And in that sudden clarity, you produce. But notice what's happening. The pressure didn't make you smarter. It just finally desperately forced the attention you should have been applying all along. The skill that helped you wasn't the pressure, it was the focus. And focus is something you can build without needing an emergency to trigger it. Think about the long-term cost of running your working life on emergency energy. There was research at Stanford looking at chronic multitasking and its effects on cognitive performance. What they found was alarming. People who regularly operate in fragmented, high-interruption work environments showed measurably reduced performance, not just during multitasking, but in sustained, focused work as well. The habit of shallow attention was bleeding into their capacity for deep attention. They were training their brains to be distracted, and the brains were learning. And then there's the health cost. Chronically elevated cortisol, the stress hormone, is associated with sleep disruption, weakened immune function, impaired memory consolidation, and long-term cardiovascular risk. The people who brag about thriving under pressure are often paying for that bravado with their health, their relationships, and the slow degradation of their capacity for genuine rest. Think about a student preparing for an important exam. There are 2 kinds. The first studies in short, intense bursts the night before each test. They pass, sometimes they even get good grades, but 6 months later, the knowledge is gone. There's no architecture in their memory. The second student, without being smarter or more talented, simply spaces their learning over time, studying in longer, focused blocks, regularly reviewing and connecting concepts. They struggle more in the moment. Deep thinking is uncomfortable, but 6 months later, they still know the material, they can apply it. They've built something lasting. The first student worked under pressure. The second student did deep work. Deep work flips this entire game. Instead of designing your work life around the adrenaline of last-minute urgency, you build a calm, deliberate, sustainable system where attention is the norm rather than the emergency. This is not just more productive, it is genuinely more enjoyable. There is a psychological state that researchers call flow, described by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi as the experience of being fully immersed in a challenging, meaningful activity to the point where time seems to disappear. Flow is one of the most reliably positive experiences in human psychology, and flow only happens in states of deep, sustained concentration. It cannot happen in a fragmented, interruption-filled day. Deep work is how you access flow, and flow is where your best work lives. Action step: the pressure swap. Take one project you've been avoiding and ask yourself 2 questions. First, what would happen if I gave this project 2 genuine deep work sessions this week, instead of 1 panic session the night before it's due? Imagine actually doing it. What would the quality of the work look like? How would you feel finishing it? Second, what does calm progress actually look like for this project? Not a dramatic all-nighter, not a heroic sprint, just steady, deliberate, daily advancement toward something real. Then schedule 2 60 to 90-minute blocks in your calendar this week specifically for this project. Specific times, like meetings with yourself that you won't cancel. Block them. Show up. Here's what most people miss. Deep work doesn't just make you more productive. It changes your relationship to your own work. It replaces the anxious dependency on pressure with a quiet confidence in your own process and control. When you feel it in your work, feels exactly like confidence. Chapter 2. Your brain is addicted to shallow work. How many times did you check your phone yesterday? If you're like the average adult, the answer is somewhere between 80 and 100 times. That's roughly once every 10 minutes during waking hours. And how many of those checks produced information that was genuinely urgent or meaningful? My guess, maybe 3 or 4. The rest were noise, habit dressed up as productivity. But you checked anyway. We all do, and the reason is not that we're weak or undisciplined. The reason is that our brains have been trained through thousands of tiny repeated interactions to expect and seek a very specific kind of reward, novelty. The human brain evolved in an environment where new information frequently meant something important: a sound in the bushes, a change in the weather. Novelty in the ancestral environment often indicated something worth paying attention to: food, danger, social opportunity. So the brain evolved a powerful drive to orient toward the new, the unexpected, the potentially significant. In the 21st century, this drive has been hijacked. Your phone doesn't deliver meaningful novelty. It delivers the simulation of meaningful novelty, a continuous, carefully engineered stream of pings, badges, previews, and counts, specifically designed by extremely well-funded teams of behavioral engineers to trigger your brain's novelty-seeking response over and over again. The red badge on your app, the pull-to-refresh mechanic, the variable reward schedule of social media, sometimes a like, sometimes a comment, sometimes nothing, and you can't predict which is structurally identical to a slot machine. It was designed that way. And the result is what Newport calls attention residue. Every time you switch your attention from your writing to your messages, from your analysis to your email, part of your cognitive bandwidth remains stuck on the previous task. You physically move your eyes to the new thing, but your brain hasn't fully switched. The old task is still consuming background processing capacity. When you return to your deep work, you're returning at 60 or 70% capacity at best. And if you interrupt yourself again before you've recovered, which happens constantly, you're compounding the deficit. Studies show it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully recover your depth of focus after a significant interruption. 23 minutes. That means if you're interrupted every 15 minutes, not unusual in an open-plan office or for someone with notifications enabled, you are essentially never doing deep work. You're spending your entire day in the shallows, believing you're being productive because things are moving. What exactly counts as shallow work? Responding to emails and messages, attending meetings that don't produce clear outcomes, reorganizing files instead of creating anything in them, reviewing other people's work without providing substantive feedback, scheduling things, filling out forms, staying in the loop, being available and responsive. All of these things have their place, but none of them require deep concentration, and none of them build your skills or create lasting value on their own. The problem is not that shallow work exists. The problem is the proportion. For most modern knowledge workers, the ratio is catastrophically skewed. If you tracked your last 5 working days honestly, you might find 4, 5, maybe 6 hours daily on shallow tasks, and genuine deep work, maybe 90 minutes, often far less. Shallow work is also training your brain. Every time you give in to a distraction, you're not just losing time, you're strengthening a neural pathway that says, when things get hard or uncomfortable, the correct response is to check the phone, open a tab, switch to something easier. The more you repeat that pattern, the more automatic it becomes, until you can't sit with a hard problem for more than a few minutes before the urge to escape becomes overwhelming. This is not a character flaw. This is how habits work, and habits can be changed. Newport's core argument is that the path back to sustained attention is not willpower. Willpower depletes over the day, a phenomenon researchers call ego depletion. Trying to use willpower to resist engineered addictive systems is like trying to outswim a current. You'll exhaust yourself before you make progress. The path back is architecture, environment design, making addictive triggers harder to reach and making the conditions for deep work easier to enter. The 2-screen rule. The single most impactful environmental change most people can make when you are doing deep work. Your phone should not be on your desk, not face down, not on silent, in another room, or in a bag that requires deliberate physical action to open. Research is clear and humbling. Simply having your phone visible on your desk, even face down, even silent, measurably reduces cognitive performance. The mere presence of the device consumes bandwidth. Your brain is doing background work to suppress the urge to check it. Remove the temptation from the environment entirely. This is not self-discipline, it's architecture. The 2-batch messaging rule. Available does not mean interruptible. A doctor on call is available. They respond to genuine emergencies immediately, but they're not spending every moment refreshing their pager. A message that arrived at 10 a.m. is not more important than one that arrived at 2 p.m. Try designating 2 specific times each day for checking and responding to messages, maybe 11:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Outside those windows, notifications are off. If something is truly urgent, they can call. Most things are not that urgent. They just arrive loudly. Action step. The shallow audit. For the next 3 working days, keep a small notebook beside you. Every time you switch tasks, voluntarily or due to an interruption, make a tick mark. Every single time. Email to writing. Tick. Notification checked. Tick. Opened a new tab out of habit. Tick. At the end of each day, count the marks. Most people count between 30 and 60 task switches per day. Some count more. This number will likely disturb you, not because you're undisciplined, but because the environment you've been working in is designed to produce exactly this result. Seeing the number is the first step to changing it. You can't redesign a system you can't see. Chapter 3. Deep work is a superpower in an attention economy. Here's a claim that might sound dramatic, but hear it out. The ability to do deep work, to concentrate without distraction on a cognitively demanding task for an extended period, may be one of the most valuable skills a person can develop in the next decade. Not because it sounds good on a resume, but because of a straightforward economic reality. In a world of increasing automation and infinite information, the scarcest resource is concentrated human cognition. Artificial intelligence and automation are accelerating rapidly, and the first wave of tasks being automated are the shallow ones: data entry, basic research, routine communication, template-based creative work, scheduling, summarizing, formatting, organizing. All of these shallow cognitive tasks that consume enormous proportions of the modern worker's day are being rapidly replaced by systems that do them faster, cheaper, and without needing a salary or health insurance. What's left? What does human cognition do that is genuinely hard to automate? Complex synthesis, taking large amounts of contradictory ambiguous information and producing a clear, nuanced, original insight. Creative judgment, deep expertise in high-skill domains, the ability to learn complicated things rapidly and apply them in novel situations. Persuasion, leadership, ethical reasoning, things that require a full, engaged human mind. Every one of those capacities requires deep work to develop and sustain. Newport identifies two abilities that will become increasingly critical in the new economy. First, the ability to quickly master hard things. Second, the ability to produce at an elite level in terms of both quality and speed. Both depend on your capacity for deep work. Learning a new skill at a high level, a programming language, a branch of analysis, a design methodology, is not primarily a function of raw intelligence. It's a function of deliberate practice, and deliberate practice, as described by researchers like Anders Ericsson, who spent decades studying elite performance, requires exactly the conditions of deep work: uninterrupted attention, focused effort, real-time feedback, and sustained repetition at the edge of your current ability. You cannot build genuine expertise through shallow, fragmented engagement with a subject. Consider two colleagues in the same role with similar talent. Person A starts their day by checking messages and immediately becomes reactive. They spend the morning in meetings and responding to requests. They do whatever focused work they manage to squeeze in around the edges, in 20-minute blocks between interruptions. Hard-working, busy, consistent, but their output is adequate, not exceptional. It keeps things moving, but it doesn't change anything. Person B, same role, same level of talent, different system. Person B protects the first 2 hours of every working day for one thing, their most important, cognitively demanding task. No messages, no meetings in that window. Just them, the work, and the kind of deep concentration that produces real thinking. In those 2 hours, they regularly produce what Person A might produce in an entire fragmented day. After 6 months, Person A and Person B are not on the same trajectory. They look like they're from different planets. The compounding effect of even 2 hours of deep work per day, sustained over months and years, is dramatic. Newport presents a formula worth remembering. High-quality work produced, time spent takes intensity of focus. You can increase your output by increasing time working longer hours, or you can increase it by increasing intensity, working deeper. The second path is both more sustainable and more powerful because it doesn't require you to extend your working hours into your personal life. It requires you to actually use the hours you already have. The skill stack focus. Identify one skill, just one that if you genuinely mastered over the next 6 to 12 months would make you significantly more valuable, more impactful, or more capable in the area of your life that matters most right now. Maybe persuasive writing, maybe data analysis or programming fundamentals, maybe public speaking, financial modeling, or deep subject matter expertise in your field that you've been meaning to build but never had time for. Whatever it is, understand this: you don't build mastery through passive exposure. You build it through active, focused, deliberate practice. Real practice means attempting something at the edge of your current ability, noticing where you're wrong or weak, and correcting repeatedly with full attention. Action step: the 90-minute weapon. Wappen to poppen, wappen to poppen, wappen to poppen, wappen to poppen, hold to poppen, off 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 to pop. 3 times in the next 7 days. Set aside 90 minutes, not 30, not about an hour, 90 minutes for deliberate practice on your chosen skill. Close everything else. Open only what you need for that specific practice. No notifications, no background music with lyrics. Work at the edge of your ability for 90 minutes. Then, when the time is done, write one sentence. What specifically improved today? Not a vague journal entry. One specific sentence. What do you understand today that you didn't yesterday? What can you do now that you couldn't do as well before? Do this 3 times. Before the 3rd session, read your first 2 sentences. Notice what's happening. This is compounding in real time. Chapter 4. Rituals. Beat motivation. Every time, every time. I want to tell you about a person who tried to become more disciplined. They bought a beautifully designed planner, the kind with the motivational quote on the cover, and the color-coded weekly spreads, and the habit tracker in the back. They filled it out on Sunday evening with real optimism. This week was going to be different. Monday was actually pretty good. Tuesday was okay. Wednesday, an unexpected situation came up and threw off the afternoon. Thursday, they were tired and told themselves they'd catch up on Friday. Friday came and they were exhausted and just needed the weekend. By Saturday, they were looking at the planner with a feeling most people recognize, the peculiar guilt of a plan abandoned, the faint resentment of an object that was supposed to help but mostly functions as evidence of failure. Here's the diagnosis. The plan failed, not because the person was weak or undisciplined. It failed because the plan depended entirely on them repeatedly choosing the hard thing over the easy thing, relying on nothing but willpower and motivation to make that choice each time. Willpower is real. Motivation is real, but they are deeply unreliable as primary engines of a working system. Willpower depletes over the day. Researchers call this ego depletion. The more decisions you make, the more your capacity for self-regulation weakens. By the end of a long workday, the part of your brain responsible for resisting temptation is genuinely measurably more impaired than it was in the morning. Motivation is even less reliable. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are contextual and temporary. Waiting for motivation to do your most important work is like waiting for perfect weather to exercise. You'll do it occasionally, but you won't build the habit. The solution Newport points to is both simpler and more elegant. Ritual. A ritual is a structured, consistent set of behaviors that you repeat in the same way, in the same conditions, at the same time. A ritual is not a plan. A plan is a list of things you intend to do. A ritual is a sequence of behaviors that your nervous system has learned to follow automatically without requiring a fresh act of willpower each time. Think about how elite athletes prepare for competition. A professional tennis player doesn't rely on motivation to practice. They have a practice ritual, same time, same warm-up sequence, same drills in the same order. The routine itself is the engine. They don't have to decide to start each part of the practice, because the structure of the ritual makes each step the automatic next action. Deep work rituals work on the same principle. When you consistently begin your deep work at the same time, in the same place, with the same preparatory behaviors, your brain begins to associate those conditions with the mental state of deep concentration. Over time, the environment itself, the chair, the desk, the sound of the music you always play, the cup of coffee, the closed laptop lid opening, becomes a trigger for depth. The ritual trains the state. Newport describes several depth philosophies, depending on your circumstances. The monastic approach, essentially eliminating all shallow obligations, is reserved for novelists, researchers, a very small number of people whose output is entirely creative. The bimodal approach alternates between clearly defined deep periods and periods of normal availability. The rhythmic approach, most practical for most people, builds a consistent daily deep work habit at a predictable time. And the journalistic approach trains you to drop into deep work whenever a window opens. For most people, the rhythmic approach is the most powerful starting point. Pick a time, show up every day, build the ritual. Building your deep work ritual, a complete template. Here's exactly what you need to define. First, the time. When in your day do you have the least external interference, the clearest head, the fewest scheduling constraints? For many people, this is early morning, before the workday officially begins, before messages arrive, before the household is fully awake. Identify your window and commit to it. Second, the location. Deep work benefits enormously from a location your brain associates exclusively with deep work. It doesn't have to be elaborate. A specific seat at your desk, a particular library carrel, a corner table at a cafe where you're a regular. What matters is consistency. The more you do deep work in the same place, the more powerfully that place becomes a cognitive trigger for the focused state. Third, the duration. Start with 60 to 90 minutes. As you build the habit, you can extend the sessions, but starting with a realistic, manageable duration is far better than committing to 3-hour sessions and failing on day 2. Fourth, the rules. Define in advance what you will and won't do during the session. You will work on one specific task. Define it before you sit down, not after. You will not check messages. You will not browse the internet unless a specific lookup is genuinely necessary. If you need to look something up, write it on a later list and continue working. Your phone is not in the room. Fifth, the start cue. Choose one small, repeatable action that signals the beginning of your deep work session. Open the document, put on your headphones, set the timer, write the first sentence. Brew the specific tea you only drink during deep sessions. Whatever it is, do it every single time. Over time, this cue becomes the trigger that tells your nervous system, we are going deep now. The state follows the cue. Sixth, and this is one Newport emphasizes that most people underestimate, a clear shutdown ritual at the end of each session. A specific moment where you close the work, review what you accomplished, note where you'll pick up next time, and clearly signal to your brain that this session is complete. The shutdown ritual frees your unconscious mind from open loops, reducing the mental background noise that would otherwise follow you into the rest of your day. Action step. The first sentence rule. The first 3 minutes of a deep work session are often the hardest. This is when the urge to delay, to check something, to get just a little more prepared, is at its strongest. Here's the rule. Your only obligation for the first 3 minutes is to produce the first output, the first sentence, the first line of code, the first sketch. It does not have to be good. It does not have to be right. It just has to exist. Because once something exists, even something small and imperfect, the work has begun. And beginning is the hardest part. Rituals make beginning automatic. The first sentence rule makes beginning immediate. Together, they solve the problem of starting, and starting, consistently, is 80% of the battle. Chapter 5. Average workers react. Skilled workers schedule depth. Let me describe 2 different experiences of the same workday. The average worker wakes up and checks their messages before they've fully woken up, before coffee, before a morning routine that prepares their mind for the day. They've already loaded their brain with other people's priorities. Someone needed something. Something went sideways overnight. There's a meeting that got added. There's a question from a colleague that implies a responsibility. Before the day has officially begun, the mental landscape is already reactive, already crowded with external demands. They arrive at their workspace and spend the first hour processing the inbox. By the time that's done, it's time for a morning meeting. The meeting produces action items, which immediately generate more messages. Lunch is eaten while continuing to respond. The afternoon is more of the same, reactive, responsive, dealing with whatever arrives in real time. By 6 AM, the day is over, and if you ask them what they produced today, what new value they added to the world, they would struggle to answer specifically. They were busy. Things happened. The wheel kept turning, but the deep work they meant to do postponed again. The skilled worker has a different architecture. They have decided in advance what the most important cognitive task of their working life is right now, not the most urgent, not the one with the most external pressure attached. The most important, the one that will compound, that will build something lasting, that will move the needle on what actually matters. And they have protected time for that task before the world gets to vote on their priorities. Maybe they rise 45 minutes earlier. Maybe they have a standing block on their calendar from 9 to 11 a.m. that their colleagues have learned to respect. Maybe they've negotiated with their manager to have one protected morning per week. The specifics vary. What doesn't vary is the principle. The most important cognitive work gets a protected, uninterrupted slot, and that slot is not negotiable. This is the difference between the worker who is managed by their calendar and the worker who manages it. One is reactive by design, the other is proactive by architecture. Newport makes a powerful observation about the modern workplace worth sitting with. In most organizations, there is no clear metric for individual cognitive productivity. What is visible, very visible, is activity, messages sent and responded to, meetings attended, time in the office, responsiveness to requests. And so, in the absence of a clear productivity metric, workers default to maximizing the visible indicators of busyness. They optimize for appearing productive rather than being productive. Newport calls this pseudo-productivity, the use of busyness as a proxy for useful effort, and it's self-reinforcing. The busier you are, the more you're seen as hard-working. The more work gets directed your way. The more work gets directed your way, the busier you become, until you're running a life that is 90% reaction and 10% creation, wondering why you feel unfulfilled. The responsiveness trap deserves direct naming. Many people, particularly early in their careers, get rewarded for being responsive. They answer quickly. They help with things readily. They become the go-to people. This reputation feels good. It creates social warmth, goodwill, the feeling of being needed and useful. But then a career moment arrives that catches them off guard. The work that actually moves careers forward, the analysis that changes the strategy, the project that demonstrates unique skill, the initiative that solves a problem nobody else solved, requires sustained concentration. And the person who has spent 5 years optimizing for responsiveness finds, somewhat shockingly, that they don't have the focused attention muscles for it. They've been so busy being helpful that they haven't built the depth capacity that advancement requires. The meeting protocol. One of the most practically significant things you can do to protect your deep work time is to establish clear norms around meetings. Try these 3 practices. First, never schedule a meeting in your protected deep work window. Second, before accepting a meeting invitation, ask what the specific decision or outcome of the meeting is. If there isn't a clear answer, the meeting probably shouldn't happen or could be replaced with an asynchronous communication. Third, batch your meetings. Instead of spreading them throughout the day, cluster them into a specific window and keep the rest of your day meeting-free. Action step. Time block. Like a CEO, take tomorrow's schedule and redesign it from scratch with this principle: depth first, shallows second. Block the first 2 hours for your most important deep work. Block 60 minutes for all shallow tasks, batched together. Emails, messages, administrative things. Do all your shallow work in this one block, then close it. The rest of your day is for focused or collaborative work. Notice what happens to your energy. Notice what you produce in the deep block compared to what you normally produce in fragmented 20-minute windows. Notice how much of the shallow work could have waited and how little actually required the immediate response you normally provide. This will likely be the most productive day you've had in months. If you want more audiobook summaries like this, ones that don't just hype you up, but actually give you a system you can use, subscribe to Unique Audiobook. We're building a library for people who want to think clearly, move forward, and build something worth building. Chapter 6. Stop switching tasks like it's a flex. Let me describe a trap that catches almost everybody. You've heard the advice. You know intellectually that multitasking is inefficient. You've probably read that the brain doesn't actually multitask. It task switches, rapidly toggling between things, rather than processing them simultaneously. You know this. and yet the urge to keep one eye on the inbox while working, to just quickly check something mid-task, this urge persists. It's almost physical. Here's why it persists. Because switching tasks feels like momentum. When you're stuck on a hard problem, when the writing isn't coming, when the code isn't working, when the analysis is revealing uncomfortable complexity, switching to something easier feels productive. You're doing something. You're moving. Email replies, quick checks, Slack messages, these all have clear, immediate, completable actions. You process them and feel a small satisfaction of completion. Compared to the open-ended uncertainty of the deep task, the shallow task feels like relief. But here's what's actually happening when you make that switch. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for sustained attention, complex reasoning, and holding multiple pieces of information in working memory, is in the middle of building a complex structure. It's loading context, holding threads, constructing connections between ideas that don't fully exist yet. This building process requires uninterrupted time. When you switch away, the structure doesn't stay built. It collapses partially. Some threads dissolve. The context has to be reloaded when you come back, and that reloading takes time and cognitive energy. This is Newport's attention residue. After the switch, part of your attention remains on the previous task, and part is now on the new task, and you're not fully present on either. You return to the deep work with a fraction of your cognitive capacity because the rest is still processing the shallows you just visited. Research from Gloria Mark at UC Irvine found that after an interruption, it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to fully return to the original task, and most workers are interrupted, or interrupt themselves, far more frequently than every 23 minutes. Which means that for many knowledge workers, the state of full deep focus is theoretically never reached during a normal workday. They're perpetually in cognitive recovery. The 27-tab problem is real and worth addressing specifically. If you open your browser right now, how many tabs are open? For the average knowledge worker, somewhere between 10 and 30. Each tab represents a context, an open loop, an unresolved question, a half-read article, a thing you were going to get back to. Each one is a tiny background demand on your cognitive bandwidth. Not a loud demand, just a whisper. But multiply the whisper by 20, and you get a persistent ambient noise that makes it harder to fully focus on any single thing. The browser tab is a metaphor for a broader pattern. The modern knowledge worker lives in a state of chronic cognitive overextension. Too many open loops, too many things started but not completed, acknowledged but not resolved, noticed but not acted on. Deep work requires closing loops, clearing the environment, and creating the conditions for singular focus. The context minimalism protocol. Before your session begins, close all browser tabs that are not directly necessary for the task. Close all applications that are not directly necessary. Set your phone to do not disturb and put it away. Write down any open loops in your head on paper, things you've been meaning to do, reply to, check on. Writing them down frees your brain from the obligation of remembering them. They're captured. Your brain can let them go. Then open only what you need. One document, one browser tab if necessary. One tool, begin. The latter list. Create a running document called Later or Parking Lot. During your deep work session, when something arises that you feel the urge to act on immediately, a message to send, a thing to look up, an idea for a different project, write it in the Later list and return immediately to the task. Do not act on it now. It's captured. It won't be lost, but it won't steal your session either. This eliminates one of the most common self-interruptions, the while I'm thinking about it, I'll just quickly impulse. You don't do it now. You log it. You continue. This is a skill, and it gets easier with repetition. Action step. The one-tab sprint. For your next deep session, set a timer for 90 minutes. Close every application except the one you need. Close every browser tab except those directly necessary. Put your phone in another room. Write your Later list before you begin, so any lingering open loops are captured. Then start with the first sentence or first action and do not close the task for 90 minutes. When you feel the urge to switch, and you will, notice it, name it, write the thing you want to do in the later list, and return. This practice of noticing and redirecting the escape impulse, rather than following it automatically, is the fundamental skill of deep work. It's not complicated, but it requires practice. The more you redirect, the stronger the redirect becomes. And here's something most people ignore. Deep work isn't just about time, it's about recovery too. A brain that never rests becomes a brain that can't go deep, which is why the next chapter is both practical and a little fun. Chapter 7, the 24-hour Deep Work Challenge. Let me propose an experiment. Not a lifestyle overhaul, not a month-long challenge, not a dramatic restructuring of your entire work life. Just 24 hours, one day, conducted as a scientific experiment in which you are both the researcher and the subject, testing one hypothesis. You can do significantly better work and feel significantly better about your work than your current default day allows. The full protocol. The evening before, do this. Identify one deep task, not a collection of tasks. 1. The thing that, if you made meaningful, genuine progress on it tomorrow, would give you the greatest sense of accomplishment and forward movement. Write it down. Define specifically what meaningful progress on this task would look like, not completion necessarily, just a specific, tangible step forward. Then schedule one 90-minute deep work session in tomorrow's day. Look at your calendar, find a window. If there isn't one, create it by moving something, declining something, or going to bed 90 minutes earlier tonight so you can use early morning. 90 minutes is not a large demand. Almost everyone can find it if they decide it matters. Then decide on your notification protocol for the day. Social media is off until after the deep session is complete. Email and messaging apps are checked only twice. Define the specific times now. Phone calls are allowed for genuine urgencies. Everything else waits. On the day itself, begin your 90-minute session with your start cue. Work on the one task only. When the urge to switch arises, and it will arise, write the diversion on the later list and return. When the session is complete, do not immediately pick up your phone. Take 10 minutes to let the depth settle. Walk around, drink water, look out a window. Let your brain consolidate what just happened. Then run the rest of the day on the batching protocol, all shallow tasks in designated windows, not spread throughout the day. At the end of the day, fill out a scorecard. Answer these questions honestly. What did I create during the deep session? What was the quality of that work compared to my usual output? How many times did I feel the urge to switch tasks? How did I manage that urge? What distracted me, and was it as genuinely important as it felt in the moment? What would I do differently tomorrow? Here's why this single-day challenge works, even though it seems almost too simple. Most people, when they imagine deep work as a sustained practice, feel daunted. It sounds like a lifestyle change, a personality shift, a commitment they can't see themselves maintaining. The 24-hour challenge removes that overwhelming frame and replaces it with one manageable experiment. No commitment beyond today, just data. And the data, when you collect it honestly, is almost always the same. You produced more, in better quality, in 90 focused minutes than you typically produce in 3 fragmented hours. The work felt harder in some ways. The urge to escape is real and persistent, but it also felt more satisfying. There was a different quality to the tiredness at the end of the session, productive exhaustion, the feeling of a mind that was genuinely used rather than merely occupied. The depth aftertaste. After your deep session, Newport recommends a deliberate transition period before re-entering the shallow world. 10 minutes, no phone, no media, just space. This isn't mystical, it's neurological. The kind of complex cognitive work that deep work involves leaves traces in your working memory, half-formed connections, emerging insights, questions that are still resolving. If you immediately flood your brain with new inputs, a social media scroll, a podcast, a barrage of notifications, you interrupt this consolidation process. The insights dissolve before they fully form. But if you give your brain 10 minutes of quiet after a deep session, a walk, some stretching, simply sitting still, you often find that additional ideas or connections emerge in the transition. Problems that seemed stuck during the session suddenly have solutions. The brain continues working on the problem in the background, and the quiet gives those background processes room to surface. The experience of that post-deep work quiet, that particular clarity and settledness, is something worth protecting and repeating. The identity shift. There's something that happens after a person completes a few successful deep work sessions that goes beyond the tactical. It's a change in how they think about themselves. Most people who struggle with focus have an identity story about it. I'm not good at focusing. I'm just a scattered person. I've always been like this. These stories feel true because they're consistent with a history of distracted behavior. But that history was produced by an environment and a system, not by a fixed, immutable personality trait. When you complete a deep work session, when you show up, go deep, produce something real, and stay with the discomfort of focus long enough for it to become flow, you get evidence against the old story. Small evidence at first. One session doesn't rewrite a narrative, but 2 sessions, 5, 20, the evidence accumulates, and at some point, the identity begins to shift. Not, I'm someone who struggles to focus, but I'm someone who does deep work. Not, I can't stay with hard things, but I'm building the skill of staying with hard things. Identity change is the deepest and most durable form of behavioral change. The 24-hour challenge is a first step in that direction. Action step. The depth aftertaste practice. After your next deep session, try this. Don't reward yourself immediately with your phone, a show, or social media. Instead, take 10 minutes of genuine quiet. Walk outside, sit near a window, stretch slowly, notice what arises in the quiet, ideas, connections, resolutions. This is your brain finishing the work you started. Give it room. Chapter 8. The Before and After Life of Deep Work. Let me paint 2 pictures of the same person. Before deep work, this person starts most mornings already behind. The first thing they do is check their phone, which guarantees that the first thoughts of their day are reactions to someone else's priorities. They feel a persistent, low-grade anxiety, not about any specific catastrophe, but a general sense of being behind, of not quite keeping up, of time moving faster than their capacity to manage it. They're busy, constantly, they work hard, they put in the hours, but at the end of most weeks, when they try to point to what they built, what they moved forward, what they're proud of, the answer is murky. They contributed to things, they helped with things, they kept things running, but they didn't create anything that will matter a year from now. Their inner monologue is loud, not dramatically, just a constant background chatter of tasks remembered, worries rehearsed, conversations replayed, obligations tallied. Even in moments of rest, the mind doesn't fully rest. There's always a pull to check something, to stay on top of the current. Genuine mental rest has become almost alien, and they know, dimly, guiltily, that they have something in them that hasn't been fully expressed. A project they want to build, a skill they want to develop, a level of work they're capable of that they haven't reached yet, but it keeps getting pushed off. Someday, when things calm down, things do not calm down. Someday doesn't arrive. After deep work, the same person, same job, same life circumstances, different architecture, they wake up, and before the world begins its claims on their attention, they have a ritual, coffee, a few minutes of stillness, and then the deep session, the protected, uninterrupted distractions-off hour or 2, where they work on the one thing that matters most right now, not responding, not maintaining, creating, building, thinking at the edge of their ability on the problem or project that will actually move their life forward. By the time the world begins, the messages, the meetings, the reactive work, they have already done something real, something they can point to, and that changes the entire emotional texture of the rest of the day. The reactive work is still there, but it's no longer the whole day. It's a portion of the day, a necessary and manageable portion, sandwiched around the deep work that makes everything else feel worth it. The inner monologue changes too. Not overnight, it takes weeks and months, but gradually the background noise quiets, partly because open loops get closed more regularly, partly because the accomplishment of deep work sessions provides a kind of mental grounding, evidence that they are moving, building, going somewhere, that the anxiety of perpetual shallowness doesn't provide, partly because the skill of attention itself improves, and with it the ability to be present in one moment without the mind constantly pulling toward another. The quality of rest improves. Because the day has been actually productive rather than just busy, the transition to rest is more complete. There's less of the guilty, wound-up feeling of someone who was busy all day but didn't build anything. There's more of the honest tiredness of someone who genuinely worked hard on something real. And then there are the effects that surprise people most, the spillover of depth into relationships and personal life. Attention is not infinitely divisible. When you spend your day in a state of fragmented, scattered, shallow attention, that pattern doesn't switch off the moment you close your laptop. You carry it into your evenings, into your conversations, into the time you spend with people you care about. You're present physically, but your mind is still in multiple places, still processing open loops, still half attending to background noise, still reflexively reaching for the phone. Deep work trains presence, not just at the desk, across the whole of life. When you practice day after day, the skill of bringing your full attention to one thing and staying with it until it's truly complete, that skill begins to generalize. You become better at listening, really listening, without half your mind composing your reply. You become better at conversations that are slow and deep, rather than fast and surface level. You become better at being somewhere without simultaneously wishing you were somewhere else. This is one of the quietest and most significant gifts of a deep work practice. Not the career gains, though those are real and meaningful, but the quality of presence it builds. The ability to be here, with this person, in this moment, fully, without the constant gravitational pull of the elsewhere. Research suggests that the quality of attention we bring to our relationships is one of the strongest predictors of the quality of those relationships. Not time spent, quality of attention, and quality of attention is exactly what deep work builds. There's a pattern worth naming here. A lot of people struggle to hold attention in conversations anymore. They jump between topics, check their phones mid-sentence, listen with half their mind, and then they wonder why connection feels shallow. Depth creates depth. The skill you build at your desk quietly shows up everywhere else. Action step 2. Depth anchors. Each day, identify 2 anchors. The first is your deep work anchor, the one focused, distraction-free session that you protect as the cornerstone of your working day. 60 to 90 minutes on the work that matters most, in the conditions that allow your best thinking to emerge. Non-negotiable. This is where the compounding happens. The second is your deep life anchor, one period of genuine full presence that is not work. 30 minutes walking without your phone. A conversation with someone you care about, where you are actually fully there, phone away, mind present, attention whole. Reading a real book for 30 minutes, without the urge to check anything. Sitting with your own thoughts in a journal. These 2 anchors, one for the craft, one for the life, together form the practice of depth. Focus isn't just a work skill, it's a life skill. Let me bring this home. Deep work is not a trend. It's not a hack. It's not a productivity tip you can add to your morning routine and then forget about. It is, at its core, a philosophy of how to spend the finite hours of a professional life in a way that produces maximum value and minimum regret. The world we are living in is not designed to support this philosophy. The world is designed to pull your attention in 1,000 different directions simultaneously, to keep you reactive, responsive, available, and occupied, but not necessarily productive in any deep sense. Every business model built on advertising, every social platform engineered for engagement, every notification system optimized for retention, they all have a financial interest in keeping your attention fragmented, because fragmented attention is attention that can be sold. Deep work is resistance. It is the deliberate refusal to let your mind become a commons that anyone can access at any time. It is the assertion that your cognitive capacity, your best hours, your sharpest thinking, your genuine creative and analytical power belongs first to your most important work and your most meaningful relationships. What we've covered. We started by dismantling the myth of working best under pressure, because the truth is, pressure doesn't make you better, it just finally forces you to focus. And you can have the focus without the panic if you build a system. We looked at how the brain gets addicted to shallow work, how dopamine loops, attention residue, and engineered addictive systems have trained most people's brains to avoid depth reflexively. And we saw that the solution is not willpower, but architecture, changing the environment to make depth easier and distraction harder. We explored why deep work is not just personally satisfying, but economically powerful in an attention economy where concentrated human cognition is becoming the scarcest and most valuable resource. While automation handles the shallow, the humans who can go deep become irreplaceable. We built the case for rituals over motivation because rituals remove the daily negotiation of whether to do your deep work, replacing it with the automatic execution of a trained behavior. Pick a time, pick a place, show up. The ritual handles the rest. We contrasted the reactive day with the depth-first day and saw that the difference is structural, not a matter of talent or discipline. If you don't schedule deep work, shallow work will schedule itself. And shallow work is aggressive. We examined the insidious damage of task switching and context fragmentation and built specific protocols for minimizing both the later list, the one-tab sprint, the context minimalism protocol. We ran the 24-hour challenge as a concrete experiment to generate your own evidence for what's possible, not theory, personal proof. And we looked honestly at the before and after transformation, not just professionally, but in the quality of presence, relationships, and inner life that a deep work practice builds over time. Depth creates depth in every domain of life. Your final action: you don't need more time. Almost everyone who struggles with focus has enough time. What they lack is a system that protects the hours that matter from the relentless invasion of the hours that don't. What they lack is signal in the noise. Here is what I want you to do tomorrow morning. Not this week. Not when things settle down, but tomorrow morning. Schedule one deep block. Make it specific. 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. or 6 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. or 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Specific time, specific task, specific location, then protect it. When the meeting invite arrives for that slot, decline it. When the urge to check your phone arises, write the thing in the later list and return. When the escape impulse comes, and it will come, notice it, name it, and stay. Finish the session. Then notice how you feel. Not just what you produced, though you'll likely surprise yourself there too. Notice how you feel at the end of a day where the most important work got done first. Because the world is loud, it will remain loud. The notifications will not stop arriving. The inbox will not empty. The requests will not slow. That is the reality, and you cannot quiet the world. But you can quiet your relationship to it. You can choose deliberately, repeatedly, structurally to protect the space where your best work lives and to inhabit that space with your full attention every day until depth becomes not a special effort but simply who you are. That is the promise of deep work.